This is an overview of the Constellation system, which is designed to transform global education. Constellation is specifically designed to use innovation and the market to spark a Tesla-like viral transformation of the $5 trillion global education industry in one generation. It took Tesla 15 years to spark, not complete, but to start a transformation of the $5 trillion automotive industry. Constellation is designed to do this in education in 25 years. Some would say this is impossible. Certainly there have been reform attempts over the past few decades with very little success and even adverse impact on schools. As a result, the term reform itself has been discredited. Here the term system transformation is used instead. Constellation is carefully designed to optimize the chances of success for global school system transformation and to repair the damage done by school reform efforts. The need is very clear. If you look at the NAEP in America, only 12 to 41% of students in any grade are minimally proficient in a given subject. Gordon Brown, the special envoy to the UN for Education, said that 800 million children are leaving the global education system without any qualifications worth their name. The impact of successful school transformation would be extraordinary. Global consultant McKinsey predicts at least a 20% increase in GDP, which would be $3 to $4 trillion in the U.S. alone. And imagine how societal problems would diminish if all citizens were given a proficient education, much less a world-class one. The many other positive impacts are covered in a separate video on need and impact. Suffice it to say, school transformation or reform is an essential global imperative. The Constellation model has 6 parts. The first 4 are the school model and the last 2 are the system transformation model. This overview looks at each part in turn and in some detail. It all starts with research at Duke University. Duke did research on 5,000 K-2 students in 28 high-poverty public schools. Their pedagogy was student-centered, using gifted methodology for all students. It used the power-up paradigm that we're going to look at later, which is the opposite of the traditional schooling paradigm. There were 2 to 4 week units built on literature by passionate experts, putting passion and creativity at the heart of the learning experience. Teachers taught soft skills, which are life success skills or social-emotional skills, very explicitly in authentic student-powered environment where students helped create the curriculum. This pedagogy was structured and disciplined and was no wandering in the daisies progressive education. Other videos include descriptions of the pedagogy and examples. The results were extraordinary. The gifted identification rate went from 1% to 28% in this high-poverty population. The top cohort of 3 had a 47% identification rate. This means that nearly half of these 1,500 students from an underprivileged population performed in the top 6 to 10% nationally, an astonishing result. Furthermore, Duke showed that the vast majority of teachers can transform their practice to the far more effective power-up model when trained effectively. One high-fidelity elementary school that adopted the methodology school-wide after the research went from 41 to 86% proficient in 5th grade reading, math, and science. Poverty in the school increased from about 70 to 90% as the scores were improving dramatically. And even though the minority population increased significantly, the racial achievement gap dropped from 27 to 8%, and STEM proficiency improved from 39 to 92%. I visited many classrooms and I noticed that there was some kind of magic in the air. These kids loved being in school, they were excited, they wanted to go to school on weekends, and they obviously learned extremely well. The students were far more capable and responsible than their teachers expected. Before they entered the program, teachers who observed Duke classrooms uniformly said, "You do not understand. My kids could never do that." And yet a year later, their students were doing exactly that. The reason for this magic was that the Duke project resonated with the students' fundamental learning DNA. It turns out that children are wired to learn rapidly and to derive great joy from taking ownership of their lives and education, from investigating and emulating what adults do, from collaboratively organizing their own learning, from learning actively, including designing learning activities, and most importantly, they're wired to construct meaning in their lives, an intensely powerful and joyful experience. These kids were extremely creative and reminded me of a phrase coined by developmental psychologist Alison Gopnik in her book, The Philosophical Baby. She calls children humanity's R&D department, and that's exactly how these kids were acting. But when we visited the other classes in the schools that were not in the Duke program, we saw what short-circuiting learning DNA looks like. Poor performance, low self-esteem, alienation, bullying, and other social pathology, and the clear squelching of humanity's R&D department. This natural learning is active, noisy, and collaborative, but principals, before they had been trained in the Duke project, would walk the halls looking for quiet, orderly classrooms that would short-circuit the natural DNA. This is a serious problem in American education and around the globe. So the first level is natural learning DNA, probably the single most important factor in effective schooling, yet a factor that is not at all understood in the vast majority of our schools. The second element is a way of channeling this learning DNA into an effective classroom model. This is what the Duke project does for Constellation. You can see learning systems based on a pure version of this learning DNA in native societies or democratic unschools that provide very little structure for students. But what Duke did is to amplify these fundamental drives while resolving them with today's schools, with their academic standards, testing, class periods, and other structures. This is very difficult and a vitally important point. From my experience with the Duke model, I came away with 3 fundamental insights upon which Constellation is designed. Insight number 1 is that the primary issue in school system transformation is a paradigm clash. Traditional teacher-centered classrooms are based on the power-down paradigm, also called the factory paradigm, or the vertical or 19th century or mechanistic paradigm. It was instituted to retool farm kids to work in factories 100 years ago. Teachers or bosses command and control students and employees, and this approach assumes 90% of humanity has low potential and the other 10% become leaders. Very importantly, innovation in these systems is low. You can see this because traditional power-down schools are incompatible with natural learning DNA, with the creative, social, and entertainment media world these kids live in outside the classroom. And as so many business groups have stated, they are incompatible with the 21st century workplace as well. What Duke did was to take this paradigm and replace it with an advanced version of the power-up paradigm seen in progressive, student-centered environments like Montessori schools. This is the Silicon Valley paradigm, which the digital revolution has brought to organizations around the world. Very importantly, this approach resonates with and amplifies learning and productivity DNA by empowering people with tools and connecting them. The power-up paradigm views the potential of all humans as high, and the innovation level of systems that work this way is very high. There's more on this in the Paradigms video. This is not just a theoretical idea. Perhaps the greatest management guru of all time, W. Edwards Deming, someone who saw and analyzed hundreds of organizations, had a very strong view of these paradigms in the workplace and in schools. He said, "Our prevailing system of management, the power-down paradigm, has destroyed our people." These are very strong words. But there are ways of working together that are vastly more satisfying and more productive than the prevailing system of management. Here he is talking about the power-up paradigm. We will never transform the prevailing system of management without transforming the prevailing system of education. They are the same system. Deming was clearly on top of this issue decades ago. An important result of the paradigm clash is that although there has been extraordinary innovation in American pedagogical research in universities over the past century, very little of this innovation has made it into classrooms. What is this destructive innovation barrier? Insight number 2 answers this question. Every school in the Duke research ended up backsliding to the power-down model when new principals and superintendents came into the schools. These leaders were steeped in the command and control culture and were simply not comfortable with the new model, no matter how successful it had been and no matter how much support it had from teachers. They brought the old model back in with them. 95+% of us have been steeped in power-down schooling since age 5. That's what we think school is. No wonder our schools are so change-resistant. Very importantly, this is the primary innovation barrier that caused a missing century of innovation in our schools. Constellation is specifically designed to eliminate this primary innovation barrier. When Duke converted these classrooms to the power-up model, they became compatible with natural learning DNA, creative social and entertainment media, and the 21st century workplace. The third insight is that schooling that is highly compatible with creativity opens a vast new territory of creative and educational experiences. Most importantly, the leveraging of Hollywood-level creativity and Silicon Valley technology. I spent some time in Hollywood working on IBM's $12 million Columbus project that integrated advanced pedagogy, enlightened technology with top Hollywood talent. Somewhat to my surprise, I found that top writers and directors are often extremely well-educated and intellectually engaged, and very interested in giving back to society. They provide extraordinary value added to the design of educational experiences. Schools desperately need the high levels of engagement and communication that these artists can provide. But Hollywood also needs the new markets and elevated creative briefs that schools can provide. The same is true of Silicon Valley. Creative digital technology is extremely applicable to the classroom, but decades of investment in digital technology have led to very few results because of the paradigm clash. In new paradigm schools, digital technology can be used to support teaming, creative productivity, learning pathways, and other advanced power-up approaches. Technology is also central to scaling training, mentoring, resources, communications, and other essential aspects of power-up schooling, and for leveraging rapidly advancing technologies like AI, VR, and robotics, which can add real value if implemented correctly. Constellation integrates learning DNA, advanced pedagogies, Hollywood creativity, and Silicon Valley tools to optimize a passion for learning. This is called systematic, joyful learning and is the third part and the heart of Constellation. In systematic, joyful learning, children use their basic drives for success to help steer and drive their own learning, create learning pathways, and develop some of their own curriculum. Joyful learning should be at the center of our civilization because socialization and culture transfer are perhaps the most important societal functions. But we are not doing this well, as Gordon Brown pointed out in his criticism of global schools. Constellation will change this. The holy grail of joyful learning is to develop a system that reliably creates unforgettable learning experiences that meet high academic and social emotional skills standards that children like as much as social media, TV, and even video games, which Duke showed was possible, that inspire children to enthusiastically take significant responsibility for their own learning and growth and to learn passionately and joyfully. With joyful learning, we can take the first big steps into the missing century of educational innovation pretty quickly and create stunning new media forms designed to disrupt our ideas about schooling. But how do we disrupt? How do we change deeply and widely held notions about schooling? We need a powerful new tool. This is the community of passion, designed to explore the extraordinary potential of joyful learning, to evolve it rapidly, and to disrupt the global education system. The community of passion is topic-based and could cover literature, history, STEM, arts, politics, or a topic that integrates several different disciplines. Its audience is passionate enthusiasts or consumers, and professionals as well as students and educators. It can use any medium appropriate to the topic: film or television, games, VR, books, interactive information, curricula, educator training, museum exhibits, all integrated. A key focus for Constellation is creating the first community of passion, the Univarium. The Univarium is confidential, so I won't go into too much detail about it, but it's about humanity, technology, and the future. It's a vivid view into a possible new future for humanity, and it's the tool our kids need to get there. It is science fiction striving to make itself real. The Univarium is designed to create millions of informed citizens around the globe and give them the tools to brighten humanity's future. Its topic has special meaning and high motivation for children because it's about their future, and it's academically very broad and covers a lot of different subjects. The topic also sparks the deepest and most interesting philosophical questions, revolving around the essential question, what does it mean to be human? It's also designed to be an excellent platform for rapidly evolving and very powerful technologies like AI, VR, etc. And it's an information source and an on-ramp for educators, parents, politicians, and others to learn about and test the waters of joyful learning. It is not a whole school transformation system. That's a separate part of Constellation that we'll talk about soon. The core technologies driving the Univarium are accelerating, making it more relevant in the coming years. There's more in a limited access Univarium video. The Univarium aims for Power Up Schooling's Holy Grail, a system to reliably create and evolve joyful learning and its unforgettable learning experiences. Very importantly, the Univarium makes transforming the school system a creative challenge and then unleashes our biggest creative guns on this challenge. It is the essential disruptor we need to ignite Power Up School system transformation. The Univarium is pure, joyful learning. But how do we transform our schools? That's the function of Constellation Transformational Learning, or CTL, the second of two Constellation organizations. It's a transformation company based on the Duke model of turbocharged professional development and mentoring to get teachers rapidly up to speed. CTL handles the complete transformation, a total makeover, of K-12 districts, including change management and the ongoing provision of products and services, encompassing several current functions like textbook publishing, professional development, technology architecture, some administration, etc. The goals of CTL's pedagogy are joyful learning's goals: passion first, soft or life skills second, and academic hard skills third. As Duke showed, embedding hard skills in soft skills and passion is the best and maybe the only way to effectively educate all American kids to high standards. These advanced goals require intense scaffolding of teachers with advanced teacher training, knowledge management, mentoring, and materials. These are multi-level and allow teachers to climb a pedagogy staircase as they learn to construct joyful learning with their kids. CTL will use a new financial model with pay for success, so there is no risk to governments. Governments will only pay for transformation when it's complete and all benchmarks are met, dramatically reducing risk. However, districts and states will pay for backsliding bonds that guarantee stable transformation for at least 15 years and stop backsliding. This essential tool is designed to smash through the innovation barrier and allow schools to evolve rapidly and flourish. CTL School Transformation completes Constellation schooling model. How do we make all this into a reform or system transformation model? The key is to understand the central dynamic holding up progress in education, the broken pump caused by the power down paradigm in our schools. If there's no increased output from a pump for increased input or pumping harder, then the pump is broken. In education, this means there is no increase in learning outcomes for increases in investment. We can see this in the introduction to the latest OECD PISA results, which says that there's been no real improvement in the learning outcomes of students in OECD countries, even though expenditures rose by more than 15% in the last decade alone. So why invest more? The broken pump can contribute to a loss of faith in government and an uncertain political future for public community schools, as their lack of perceived success has led to calls for privatization. The goals or output we are looking for are the power-up PASH goals: passion, social-emotional skills, and hard academic skills, plus increased economic development and decreased societal problems and costs. To fix and calibrate the pump, we need to quantify our goals, including proxies for longer-term goals like economic development, and then create a power-up pedagogy and develop, pilot, iterate, and improve, and stabilize the model for 5 to 8 years, and measure the results over 3 to 5 years, then correlate the results to investment for a total of 8 to 12 years after the Univarium is launched. This should take about $1 billion, or about 0.2% of the current Giving Pledge pool. This is also about a quarter of what the Gates Foundation has spent on school reform so far, with limited results. Fixing the pump liberates teachers, making them full professionals who will eventually get professional salaries and will help power virality. The paradigm clash sets teachers up for failure, so they need unions to protect them from unfair blame. When the pump is fixed, unions can go from worker protection groups to professional guilds and wash away the animosity they have somewhat unfairly attracted from many quarters. Government funding will start at the latest when the pump is fixed and calibrated, because at that point education will be viewed as the revenue-generating activity it should be instead of the cost center that the broken pump makes it. Fixing and calibrating the pump will be done by CTL, Constellation Transformational Learning, leading other government, private, and nonprofit organizations. The most important thing to understand about scaling system transformation is that schooling is an irrational market. All over America and the world, school administrators buy educational products and services that are quite suboptimal or even harm students. This is a sign of an irrational market where the demand side does not know what to demand. Constellation must educate and rationalize this market for wide scaling to occur. CTL is designed to do this, but it'll take time and investment. Central to market rationalization and scaling is the support of the Fortune 1000 or equivalent in other countries. The single strongest driver of scaling and virality will be when businesses seeking to build new offices and plants show a clear preference for communities with power-up schools. Duke scaled very well, but to get to tens of thousands of classrooms per year, scaling technologies are essential, especially AI. And once the innovation barrier is smashed, we should see a very rapid improvement cycle as transformation companies, researchers, teachers, artists, and humanities R&D department really get into an innovation spiral. The current system systematizes failure, and standards, assessments, and policies will have to be rapidly updated as the power-up paradigm evolves and spreads. CTL will lead the field in this updating and other aspects of scaling. Power-Up Schooling has a new financial model. There are factors driving costs down. Administrative costs will go down with technology support and reduced regulation. The noise in the system, like excess special education, will also settle down. And the student-teacher ratio may go up and costs down because there's far less babysitting. Transformation services will be high, and teacher salaries will eventually reach professional levels. Constellation assumes a maximum net increase of about $2,000 per student per year, or about $100 billion across the U.S., which will be more than recovered because the economics of power-up system transformation are extraordinary. The 20% increase that McKinsey estimated in our $20 trillion American GDP, multiplied by the 25% tax rate, is about $1 trillion a year in new tax revenues. If societal costs like welfare, criminal justice, food support, and drug addiction go down 50%, which is reasonable, this results in savings of $500 billion for a total of $1.5 trillion of revenue increase and savings per year. At $2,000 more per student per year, this makes power-up system transformation in the United States self-funding by a factor of 15. As a business proposition, power-up system transformation is extraordinary. If transformation company revenues grow to 15% of an expanded $6 trillion global power-up schooling market, this is $1 trillion a year. If CTL and Constellation Communities of Passion retain 10% of this market, that would be $100 billion a year in revenue, which would put Constellation in the Fortune 30. Note that CTL and the Univarium will be benefit corporations with equal mission and profitability goals. Earlier, I pointed out that many people feel that school system transformation is essentially impossible, but Constellation has a dozen robust factors contributing to success in system transformation, including leveraging learning DNA, using the Duke model proven in public schools, understanding and fixing the paradigm clash, seeing the value of joyful learning and the extraordinary disruption it can cause, a specific pathway to deeply engage the world's creative community, a proven school transformation model, understanding and countering backsliding, the biggest factor in the innovation barrier, an improved financial model for schools, an understanding of and solution for the broken pump, specific plans and technologies for scaling, utilizing the Tesla model of industry transformation through market innovation, and virality accelerators. Previous attempts at school reform have had at most a few of these factors. Constellation is designed from the bottom up to fit all these pieces together and finally crack the code of viral school system transformation. One final word. IBM's Columbus project, produced in Hollywood, was built from very high levels of imagination and production values, and I attended several large teachers' conferences where IBM presented it. What I saw shocked me. I saw thousands of teachers cry, usually more than half the audience. Teachers couldn't really tell me why, but after a while, I figured it out. They were crying because somebody cared. Technology titans and Hollywood's best were helping them in the classroom. The heavy guns they had only seen used to sell cars and create superhero movies were now being utilized to help them in their classroom. And it was beautiful. So I believe it's time to give teachers the tools they need and deserve so they can fully succeed and start creating the generations of creative, collaborative problem solvers we desperately need. That's the central idea of the Constellation system.